Okay, so we can see the screen. I can hear all your sound. And if you guys want to show your camera whenever you're ready or show your video, that's great. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our final parent hour for the semester, although I hear that there might be a couple more things going on in December that aren't part of the official program. So I was already thinking of what could potential parent hours be for the spring. So already thinking ahead, but thank you so much for joining us. We know that you probably have a ton on your mind, like everybody does. So it really is a pleasure to be here with you and to talk about some timely topics. So for those of you that haven't been on before, I'm Jessica Nicklin. I'm the Associate Vice President. Realized I did not have my own camera on. Sorry. I'm the Associate Vice President for Student Success. Part of my role is overseeing Center for Student Success and Health and Wellness, tutoring, accessibility, and a couple other areas. So I'm really proud to have my teams here tonight to present to you. And what we're talking about is preparing for the end of the semester. So, of course, like most things, this semester is ending a little bit different than what we're used to, but that doesn't mean that there still aren't finals and papers and pressures and responsibilities. So we thought we'd bring together some of our offices that are, especially experienced in this area. So we're going to have the Center for Student Success, our Centralized Tutoring Center, and our accessibility services tonight. So like always, like all of our presentations so far, we want this to be for you and to be somewhat casual and fun. So our presenters will go through some slides with some formal information, but feel free to pop things in the chat or the Q&A and we'll address them for you. So we won't bore you to tears over the next hour with an hour presentation and an exam at the end. So without further ado, I will introduce Chrissy and Jen from the Center for Student Success.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Siegel, and I am from the Center for Student Success. And Chrissy and I are going to talk to you about some of the things that you can do to prepare or help your student prepare for the end of the semester. So,
hey, Chrissy, just so you know, the PowerPoint's gone.
No. Okay, hold on one second.
I think Jen just wanted her introduction to be extra. She wanted to make a statement.
Just trying to drag it out a little bit. Welcome to 2020, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your time. Okay, so here we go. So as we kind of get started, we just wanted to put the reminder out there to everyone to be kind to yourself and to your classmates and your professors as well. Just a reminder, this is new for all of us, right? So, don't be too hard on yourself and, provide support to your peers when needed. So a couple of things we wanted to point out as you're preparing for the end of the semester are going to be registration, planning for remote study, what to take home with you, preparing for finals, and of course, those virtual resources. So when thinking about registration, the key things to kind of keep in mind as you go through the next week or so are going to be taking care of any holds on your account, learning what your plan of study throughout your years here at the university are going to be like, and meeting with your advisors, and of course, finally registering for those courses. So as we look at holds, the different types of holds that you might see on the account are going to be cashier or bursar holds, EverFi holds, and immunization holds. So cashier or bursar are going to be related to payment, EverFi are going to be learning modules that have to be completed, and immunization records are pertaining to those health or vaccination records. Okay, and if you have a hold, but you're not sure what the hold is, our office can certainly help with that. And that's a great segue into our registration event, which we did hold one 2 weeks ago. That was extremely successful. We had about almost 20 students attend. It was virtual, it was a virtual event, it was through Zoom, and we can help with anything that falls under the registration umbrella. We did have a couple people ask questions that didn't have anything to do with registration, and we're certainly happy to help out where can. So we did leave the information on this slide, so it tells students how to join the meeting and the passcode. And again, this is going to be for anything registration or non-registration, but a lot of things that we did help with at the last event did include those registration holds. So if you do have a hold and you're not sure or you want more information about that, we will be available from the Center for Student Success with the Bursar's Office and Office of Financial Aid on this Thursday at 12 to 1:30 p.m. And students will also get a text message about that. They received one today, actually, and then they'll get another reminder on Thursday just before. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is planning for remote study. So everybody's going remote soon, right? So what does that mean? So it's just really important to ask for help. So while we're not in the classroom together, we are still here for you. And we definitely want to send that message out and make it pretty clear. So, feel free to ask the Center for Student Success, anything you need, and we can always point you in the right direction. So while planning for a remote study, just make sure that you and your students are, or your students are communicating with professors about which learning platform they're going to be using. So they might be using Zoom or WebEx or Blackboard Collaborate or Google Meets, or there's probably a million out there that I'm forgetting, but it's really just important to make sure that the student is aware what learning platform the faculty member is going to be using for that specific class. And also keep in mind that in a schedule of 5 or 6 classes, each professor might be using something different. So it would be really important to kind of keep a record of what classrooms are going to be in which learning platform and make sure that the student is attending the correct one. Also checking internet access in the home, making sure that you have access to video and audio on the computer, plan for a quiet place to study in the home. That study space is really key. So just kind of planning out where that new groove is going to be. And preparing the workspace and coordinating with family members or roommates who are also going to be studying remotely or working from the home. And I'm going to hand it over to Chrissy now, and she's going to talk a little bit about what to take home with you.
Yes, and I know that we're going to touch upon this in greater detail later as well, but what to take home with you guys. So it's important to make sure that students are gathering all of their things. So we're saying, textbooks are obviously most important, notebooks, materials for class, so your syllabi, making sure all of your students are taking all of them so they can reference any material, any future assignments that still might be outstanding these last 2 weeks, any handouts, anything that they've taken, or notes like lab reports. Make sure they're grabbing everything. So everything that they've done up until this point for any of their classes, take home with you and have them take home with them. That way they can reference any material, especially if exams are cumulative and they build off of each other. You want to make sure that they have all the information to study and to prepare. Laptops and desktop. I'm not sure how many desktops we have, but definitely laptops and desktops, so they have means to log on to their classes virtually and electronically. Chargers, that's important. I would say it almost seems like a no-brainer. I can't tell you how many times I've left somewhere without my laptop charger and was like, oh my goodness, and then they have to go out and purchase another one or go back to campus. So chargers, phone chargers, all that stuff, especially because they're going to be logging on electronically, it's really important to make sure that they have all of that. Medications, obviously they want to make sure they're taking that home, with them too, so they have access to that. Clothing, winter clothing, especially because they're going to be home for a great part of the winter. They're leaving in November, not coming back until February. So make sure they're taking their coats, their scarves, and all their winter clothing that they brought onto campus with them. Important personal belongings. We say, nothing that is of true value that they, wouldn't want with them. So any kind of jewelry, anything that's really valuable, making sure that they're taking that home with them. Obviously, all resident halls will be safe and secure, but we just want to make sure that anything that is of value to them, they have with them. And this is a fun and an interesting one. I say food, and it's not because we want them necessarily to have something to eat, but it's because we don't want food to go bad in their resident halls. So when Jen and I were talking earlier, we're like, yes, bring your food, because if you leave your food and it stays there until February, when they come back, they're going to have a really unpleasant sight. And smell probably. So make sure they take all that food that's left over from the semester home with them. And so they don't have to come back to something that might be a little unpleasant. So these are just a few key things that, in case your student aren't thinking about what to bring, make sure they're taking that medication, their personal belongings, their winter clothes, all of that. And I know we're going to touch upon that a little bit more on academics, like what to bring home and pack up for academics. This is just a little bit more of a broader of, you're packing up your room, what do I take? Or your dorm room. Okay. So preparing for finals, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more. I know the Centralized Tutoring Center is going to talk a little bit more about, how to prepare for finals effectively and efficiently. But the biggest thing we talk about in the Center for Student Success is managing your students' time. So making sure that they're not cramming, staying up late the night before, that they're really, spacing out some of these exams. The exam schedule is strategic. So exams are placed in order for a student to not feel so burdened. And so if they pace out their studying, they can do just well. So making sure they're managing their time. There can be a lot more distractions, as Jen talked about, especially being in their home. They have access now to maybe video game systems that they didn't, Netflix, TV, brothers and sisters, friends from home. So just making sure they're managing their time appropriately. Staying organized. I know myself, I have many of planners and dry erase boards around my room. So I would always say, make sure your student is staying organized, making sure they're writing out their final schedule. You can even have them share it with you. That way, when their finals are. But organization is key. So just like they have a nice, clean, study space, hopefully in their dorm room, making sure, like Jen said, they have that nice, clean, organized space at home, but making sure they are staying organized. Creating a new calendar in their workspace, especially, again, I mentioned a dry erase board. So I had one in, my resident hall, and if I didn't take it with me, all my important facts and dates were on there. So if I leave in November and I'm not coming back till after the semester when all that key information is, making sure that I have something else that I can take additional notes to and create a new form of a calendar. Start early. So we have a final exam schedule, like I said. So as long as they're managing their time, staying organized, and starting early, they're going to be prepared to be really successful. So again, we really don't want them to wait till the last minute and to procrastinate. Keep up with faculty office hours and tutoring. So again, I know the tutoring, center is going to talk a lot about that, but we want them to continue with their tutoring. We want them to stay up with those meetings, especially if they have a tutor, continue to meet with them even virtually over the semester. But making sure that they are continuing going to any kind of review sessions as necessary.
See, I'm just laughing a little, thinking about, for the past 3 months, they've lived pretty much on their own and probably think they know the answers to everything. And and I wonder if our students are laughing a little bit, and then, they're going to come home and, they probably don't want you to be like, let me see your calendar and do this and do that. So it's good to know these things so that you can like sprinkle them in. But I'm just picturing, like, I know, mom, when you're trying to stay on it, but it's so easy, especially I remember that, like, going home for Thanksgiving and that feeling of like you're with your family and you want to sleep and you want to relax, and then after that is 2 more weeks of finals and just not getting in that I'm just going to sleep all day, and that there is still 2 weeks left. So trying to get creative how you support these things, because I could just picture it like, mom, I'm not showing you my calendar. So
oh gosh, no, yeah, absolutely. And I know there's probably so many more distractions too, if you think about it. Like, they haven't seen some of their friends from high school in so long. So now, I mean, I don't know how many of them they're going to be able to see, especially with everything still with COVID. But I mean, there's just a lot more distractions too. So making sure they're planning accordingly for that. Awesome. And then this is one of our favorite ones, is setting up virtual study groups with peers. So they have a lot of opportunity to continue that collaboration with their classmates and their friends from school. So hopping on a Zoom and, studying together, making sure that they're collaborating, making sure they all understand the material. That's one of my biggest recommendations for students to understand materials, to study together. You can help a peer, they can help you. And so there really has that cohesive and collaboration. And then set mini goals for each day. So I think if they wake up and they have, an agenda, they're organized, they're starting early, they're scheduling everything out, setting just a little goals each day so that way they feel successful when they complete it. Even if it's just, hey, I'm going to, read this article, or I'm going to write 2 pages of my really long final exam essay, just a little mini goals that they can feel, victorious and feel like they've accomplished something. So these are just some general guidelines that in the Center for Student Success, we recommend for them. And then we wanted to share some virtual resources. So this has a ton of information. So if a student logs on to the Center for Student Success webpage, they will see a ton of great resources. So there's technology resources that you can direct them to that talks about the different platforms that we have and we use here at UHeart. So making sure they know what platform their professor is using is key. We can use Blackboard Collaborative. Some of us use WebEx, some of us use Zoom. So how do we troubleshoot all of these, right? Especially when classes are now going virtual, when maybe they've met in person, they want to make sure they have a true understanding of what platform their class is going to be meeting on. And so our websites, if they just go to, hartford.edu and type in the Center for Student Success, there's two great resources. There's academic resources on time management, setting up an agenda, how to study efficiently. And then there's also those technology resources. So if they have any challenges with troubleshooting anything, especially with Blackboard, WebEx, or Zoom, there's a lot of great resources on here. So I just wanted to direct you guys to the Center for Student Success webpage, so you're going to find a lot of really great, helpful information. And, all right, I'm going to turn it over now to the Centralized Tutoring Center.
Can you hear me all right? Yes? Okay, thank you. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm happy to be here with you tonight. There is going to be some overlap between what Jen and Chrissy shared with you and what I'm going to put into the mix as well. And I have one of my tutors here. This first slide is really just basic information, and if the slides are going to be made available to you, you will have this on hand going forward. I do want you to know that the Tutoring Center has tutors in a wide range of courses and disciplines, and they're very talented and they're very creative. They do some seriously good work, but they're also, in addition to being exceptional scholars, they're very down to earth, they're very approachable. They do a fine job of commiserating with their tutees, sharing information about their own study habits and their own lives so that the tutee will feel comfortable with them. They've got a lot of experience in various kinds of courses and study skills and strategies. They have been working remotely since we shut down back in March. So they've got a lot of experience with remote tutoring. And I know it's my job to brag about them, but they do exceptional work, and I am going to boast. They very creative and inventive with the platforms that they use. If one thing doesn't work well, they try something else. If the student they're working with has a preference for something different, then they will jump in and use a different platform. So they're very creative and very inventive, and we have just been humming along since after March 13th. I think we went all remote on March 30th. We've had only a handful of in-person sessions, so they're experienced with remote learning, so they can help our students with that. As it says at the bottom of this slide and what some of our hallmarks are, I mean, I can't say enough about their patience and their compassion, their engagement with their tutees. They work one-on-one, they work in small groups. So as I said a few minutes ago, they're very, very competent and they do some really good work. Another thing to remember when you're thinking about what's going to happen in the next few weeks after the Thanksgiving weekend, if a student is having difficulty actually navigating technology, if they can send us an email, that's all they have to do is send us an email to ctctutor@hartford.edu. A tutor will reach out to them and get the ball rolling. They can start with something very simple, such as an email, and then they can go forward with something a little bit more advanced and a little more sophisticated. If there's, if there are any students out there that don't have a comfort level with various technologies, this tutors in the center can help with that as well. Someone is advancing the slides for us, right? Okay, thanks. So a couple more reminders, again, just a little bit of information to go on the calendar. So see, you don't have to wait for your student's calendar. You can put this on your calendar yourself, the dates of finals week. During finals week, as to be expected, we have high demand on our time. The volume increases, stress increases, so we need to do the best that we can, everyone, to share the message that planning ahead is really important. As the folks in the CSS suggest, we do too. Think ahead, plan ahead, look at your calendar, get things on your to-do list, and get those appointments for tutoring. We can book ahead. We have an electronic appointment management system here at the university that we use, and we can get those appointments scheduled well in advance. We do on-demand tutoring, the electronic equivalent of walk-in tutoring, so to speak. But it isn't a good idea to assume that something can happen at the last minute. Sometimes it does, of course. Sometimes a student needs something and a tutor is available, and that match, that appointment can be made. That can be convenient, but we shouldn't count on that. We really need to do our best, despite the hectic, rigorous schedule of the last few weeks, all the anxiety and stress that might be, simmering around us. We need to do our best to plan ahead and get those appointments. It's important for our students and our families to remember that the tutors are students as well, and they have final exams just like the rest of the students. They're very good at managing their own time, obviously, but their first job is to be a good student. Being a good tutor comes after that. I want to make a point about take-home exams, take-home final exams. Most of them, well, not most of them, I stand corrected, I apologize. They will all be remote. They will all be delivered on some electronic platform. And sometimes in writing courses or writing intensive courses, a final paper, a last paper of the semester constitutes a final exam. We can help with those, with final exams and papers that constitute final exams, only with professors' approval. So that's really important. We can't do that unless we have the approval. I don't want our students getting into trouble for compromising boundaries. I don't want my tutors getting into trouble, losing their credibility if they cross those boundaries. So we need to make sure that if someone is seeking help with a final exam or a paper as exam, that we have the professor's approval. Now, I've been in the academic support business here at the university for 22 years. And I've only had one situation where a professor said, absolutely not, my student cannot get tutoring assistance for an exam or for this particular paper. Most professors want students to do the very best that they can do. Professors are happy for the assistance. We have been working very hard all semester long to be highly collaborative, to do teamwork with one another, to support one another. So my expectation is that professors will be all right with this, but we have to follow our ethical boundaries and standards and make sure we check first. So let's keep that in mind as well. And the tutors know this too. So if a tutor is approached, they'll make sure they let me know that we've got something that we need to follow up on. Okay. So we've already talked briefly about what you need to take home before you sort of call it a day and leave campus for the upcoming break and the following shutdown after Thanksgiving. And I said the same thing, everything physical that you can possibly think of in terms of your academics, all of your textbooks and your manuals, all of your instructional materials, everything of that nature. And then I also suggested that you put together some kind of a phone list with professors' phone numbers, if they're willing to share, lab assistants, teaching assistants, your tutors, the library staff, and things of that nature. And when I was putting the slide together, I thought, well, that almost doesn't make any sense because we're talking about remote learning. And I'm suggesting that you have all kinds of stuff made of paper with you. But here was my angle, here was my thought, and I've seen this happen before. We're coming into winter, and that means we're going to have stormy weather. And here in this part of the country anyway, our stormy weather often includes windstorms and power outages, and that means you're not going to have access to your online learning platforms. That means you grab the phone, you go out to the car, you charge the phone, and you try to call somebody. So that's another way of being prepared, I think. Have all the paper materials that you can have with you and just sort of, play a game with Mother Nature and see if you can psych her out. I lost power for a few moments this morning, about 10 minutes this morning. The wind took my internet connection out just for 10 minutes. It happened a few weeks ago when I was teaching my class. And back in August, we were without power for a few days. So I think it's really important to be prepared for those contingencies and not just having all of the physical learning materials, everything that's paper and concrete and so forth, but having phone numbers so that you can charge up your phone somewhere and head off to call somebody and see what's cooking. Professors will be accommodating, no doubt, but still you need to have access to some line of communication. Okay, next slide. So Margaret's going to take over. Margaret is one of the tutors in the Centralized Tutoring Center. She's a senior physical therapy major. She's going to be a doctor of physical therapy when she completes the 7-year program. I'm happy to say she is a recently named Emeritus Scholarship winner. Yay! She's a Renaissance woman. She tutors writing and several of the physical sciences. And she's got some good advice for our families for the next few weeks coming up.
Thank you so much, Professor Morelli. I feel as if you've given me more praise than I deserve, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So, as Professor Morelli has said, I do tutor biology, chemistry, and some writing courses. And so I see a lot of different students and they have different requests, but I always tell them kind of the same things, especially as finals and other midterms have come up and several different projects. I always tell them to try to work in advance because as finals come about, everything can be piling on top of each other. So the quicker we get those things done, as a student, I also tell them this because I can sympathize. Although I am a tutor, I am still a student and have a handful of work of my own. But as the more things that we can get done in advance, the less stressful things will be, especially as finals come about. So that's always a great tip. Sorry, my dog just keep going in and out of the room. Another tip that I always found helpful was reading before classes and preparing for tutoring appointments, whether it's with myself or any other tutors, because I found that as a student, when you come into class, sometimes you can be overwhelmed with the amount of material that is thrown at you. But if you read beforehand or maybe even do some practice problems, you feel as if you have a better sense of what the material is, and you can even ask questions that will engage you and give you some more of an indication of what you're learning at the time. And lastly, the most important thing is just to take time for yourself. Although we feel like we need to get this done and we have all these deadlines, at the end of the day, we are human and we can only do so much. Although as a student, you want to do your very best that you can do at the university, but at the same time, just killing yourself, for lack of better words, to get all of the work done isn't going to do any good. So just take time for yourself and ask for help whenever necessary from your parents, your fellow students. Everybody is going through the same thing. So just ask for help. There's no shame in that. And always reach out to the tutors because we're also students. So we can sympathize and we're very ready to help and very happy to do so also. I really do have a great time talking to students and just getting to know them and helping them with problems that I encountered also as a freshman, sophomore, and junior. So that's about it. Thank you.
So I guess I'll take Jared's slide. He's in class this evening and couldn't be with us. Before I do that, though, I do want to emphasize one point that Margaret made. I think it's an excellent point in terms of self-care. We ourselves as colleagues talk about this at our meetings too, checking in with one another. How are you doing? Are you taking care of yourself and things of that nature? And I also think it's a sign of resourcefulness when our students reach out for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It means they're being smart and resourceful and they know what's at their disposal, and so they're going to reach out and avail themselves of those services. So Jared is a senior and he is a math major, majoring in math and data science. He has been my go-to guy when we first started doing remote tutoring. He emphasized, as has been said already this evening, time management. His suggestion is to break your work into manageable chunks and to work on things, in steps and stages. He suggests also that we study smart. We have different ways of learning and recalling and things of that nature. So know who you are as a learner, know what your strengths are when you study and capitalize on those skills. And when you meet with groups, then everybody can toss a little something different into the mix. If you have a group tutoring session or a study group or things of that nature. And this is another idea that we've heard this evening too, very important. Lines of communication must be kept open and active. Stay in touch with professors and tutors and other resources on campus. These things are supported by tuition dollars. Again, it's a sign of resourcefulness to reach out and say, I have a question about this, that, or the other thing. And another self-care example, taking breaks, doing what is necessary to manage your stress and anxiety. When the weather's nice, get out there and walk, take advantage of Mother Nature when she's behaving herself and things of that nature. A lot of this is common sense, but I think it's important for us to emphasize common sense and to know that our instincts are good and on the right track. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about in the Tutoring Center on a regular basis, not just, dangling participles and how much water can run through a pipe at so much pressure and, where are your X's and your Y's and all of that stuff. We talk about these kinds of things too, because we treat the student holistically, if you will. Okay, I think that's it for us for now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy Carlson. I am from Accessibility Services. We are the office for students with disabilities. So one of the most important things for our students to keep in mind as we transition to completely remote classes is how to go about using their testing accommodations. So for online exams and finals, for students with testing accommodations, all they need to do to get those accommodations is to contact their professors directly at least a week before the test. More time is better if possible, and request that the professor extend their time online. We always encourage students, if there's any issues with their testing accommodations or any other accommodations as they transition to online classes, please just reach out to us and we can address those issues. But for the most part, accommodations will transition smoothly into the remote classes. For our students with disabilities that have academic coaching appointments, those will go through the end of finals this semester. And we are offering upperclassmen with disabilities a one-time academic coaching appointment as they transition to remote learning. If they want that, all they need to do is reach out to us and request an appointment. Next slide. And just to give our students a heads up about how to continue their accommodations after the fall semester. So for winter term classes, they will receive an email in December with a form that they need to fill out to request their accommodations for winter term. For spring semester, an email will be sent out to their university email in January. Same thing, they'll have a form in their email that they can fill out, and that's how they request their accommodations for the spring semester. Some students were told that they need to submit more documentation to us after this semester, and that would be due before the start of their next semester, whether that be winter or spring. And if they have questions about what we need from them, they can absolutely reach back out to us. And for any students that don't have accommodations right now, but are looking for accommodations, it may be possible to implement them for the end of this semester, depending on how quickly we can get through the process. Otherwise, we can absolutely get students set up for either winter term or spring semester if they're looking for accommodations. And the very first step to requesting accommodations is to submit documentation of a disability directly to our office, and then we would take it from there. You can check out our website for our documentation guidelines to see what it is we're looking for, or you can reach out to our office and we would be happy to walk you through that process. And that's it.
Tracy, what's your email so I can put it in the chat?
Sure, it's TR Carlson.
Okay. Or is that what you would want if someone was going to request an accommodation? That's the one?
Yep, that's
okay.
Perfect.
There you go. And actually, I just realized I posted a link earlier, but only to the panelists, so that doesn't help. Here's the link for the Center for Student Success resources as well in the chat. Let's see.
Yes, I was wondering if we could turn it over to Nathan to maybe put like some student perspective too. We didn't give him a chance to speak, and I wanted to hear some pointers he had as we move virtually, and as a student himself, like he would add some pointers on.
Definitely. Do you want to kill the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'll do that.
There we go. It'll make it easier for you too.
Yeah. All right. So Nathan is actually our grad assistant for the Office of Orientation, but he also was an undergraduate student and got his bachelor's degree in psychology. So I'll let Nathan tell a little bit more about himself, but if you wanted to add on a few things we said, just from a student perspective, I think is great.
Yeah, totally. So this is my first year. I'm getting my master's in school psych. And so, getting sent home last semester, I think the biggest downer and thing to keep in mind about going online is it's not what, students want when they go to college. And that can be kind of upsetting. But so the biggest thing is trying to change the mindset about it. We've made it through this whole semester and we've gone up and up and up and we've done all this work and now it's kind of all at the end. But instead of seeing it as this big mountain, we're at the top and we're about to go over and it's going to be okay. And then we're going to hopefully come back in the spring. But yeah, I think the hardest part is going home. And then like, I know for me and most students, when you go home, like that's it, like you're going to be done. You want to relax. But you still have to do all this work because your family's there and everyone wants to talk to you and knock on your door when you're in Zoom classes. But trying to find that balance between home and school when you're all in the same place is kind of difficult. But just being open and honest and communicating, this is when I have to do this and this is when I have to do that, and kind of setting some rules for the household has really helped me and my family because my mom was working from home. My sister was teaching from home. My dad still went to work, but, so the three of us had to find a system and where we could all share the house. So I think that's the most difficult part, but the biggest thing is to just be open and communicate everything, and well, it'll happen and we'll all get through.
I don't know, Margaret, do you want to share any of your, kind of sentiments about having to transition to remote?
Yeah, I was actually just going to say I completely agree with Nathan because that's exactly how I have felt. Because being home, whenever I come home, sometimes even on campus, I'll come home for a weekend when I can and kind of squeeze in between work schedule and class schedule. Home, I love to just relax, spend time with my parents and my siblings. I really do love it. And so now this semester, as a fully remote student, I've had difficulty trying to balance the time dedicated to class and assignments and all the work involved with it, and also spending time with my family because there's time for dinner and then after dinner we just like to chat. So it's definitely a balancing act, but at the end of the day, I've figured out a way that works. I just get it all done in the morning, everything I need to do. And after I finish that, I know that I have time to spend with my family. But not to say that it is the same for every student. Every student has a different way of approaching work. Sometimes they like to work in the evening, sometimes they like to work in the morning. So I think just figuring out what works best for you and letting your family know, or your friends, whoever's in the house with you, letting them know that you need this time, you need to focus on school, but not to say that you don't want to spend time with them, because it is tempting just to close your computer, everything's on your computer, and to spend time with your family. But they are your classes. You need to do the work, and it is very important. So just reminding yourself that both are of equal importance. But I completely agree with you, Nathan. I totally understand.
And I definitely think a theme of tonight's presenters is, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. So whether, I always say every week that when in doubt, css@hartford.edu, whether it's because of a hold or just needing technology support or not knowing where to start. But, getting a tutor is not a sign of weakness. Going to using your resources at Accessibility Services is not a sign of weakness. It's, actually resilient, and, showing that you can use different, tools and methods. And, I think sometimes people don't want to get a tutor or they don't want to seek those resources, but they're there. There's a lot of them there. So definitely, encouraging your students to reach out and take advantage of that. Sure. Well, we have a quiet crowd tonight, not a lot of questions. There was one that came up. Jen and Chrissy, when did first year registration start? Did it already start or does it start tomorrow?
First year, advanced registration started November 5th. So if they're on like a sports team, if they have any kind of accommodations, if they have a job on campus as a first year student that requires like being a tour leader, most first year students start registering on November 18th. And it's usually the 18th, 19th, and the 20th. 18th if they have any like early college credits or AP credits or anything that gave them a little bit of a credit load when they entered. Most students, Jen, I think you'd probably agree, register at the 20th.
Yeah, most are the 20th. And then also honors was on the 5th.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of them, I think, all of mine are the 20th. So I didn't even know about the 18th, but that's good to know.
Yeah, and just you said this, but if they they go to register and they have a hold, don't panic. There could be a variety of reasons. So again, advisor or CSS at hartford.edu will help with that. You made a plug for the immunizations. We've been working on that. So if your family hasn't turned in the immunization paperwork yet, we definitely need that. So that probably was done over the summer, and then with COVID just got forgotten about. But make sure that gets sent to health services as soon as possible. I'm trying to think any other major reminders about anything and everything. No. Well, I don't think we have any other questions. So anything else from the panelists?
I can put the link to the health records in the chat. That way, just in case everyone sees it, that's the form they have to download and send back. And it can either be faxed or emailed to health services. So that's just important. It talks about what vaccines they need to have for first year students and all students. So.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the panelists for taking their time, especially the students. It's always nice to hear from you guys instead of just us because you're living it. So it really adds a lot. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night. And parents, have a wonderful Thanksgiving and safe. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.